So yeah, I grew up. I moved to Canada when I was 2 years old. So I pretty much grew up in Canada my whole life. So I grew up in Vancouver, and in my early childhood, I spent a lot of time, as I said, I spent a lot of time playing games. So my dad was never so happy about that, because I would probably spend like 4 or 5 hours playing games, and he always wanted me to do my homework and like spend more time in school. And I think that allowed me to become more like I guess experienced. So when it came time to make CounterStrike, I had a lot of experience like playing games, and I knew how games like were fun, and I also spent a lot of time like practicing how to make games as well. So yeah, I was doing that in my spare time. So that, I think, having that like that balance of school and also being able to do that in my spare time allowed me to make CounterStrike like easier when it came time to making it. So it was difficult to balance, but I managed to pass my university. So I think my parents were glad about that. I started playing games when I was 8 years old. So I played on a really old, the old Commodore 64, and ever since then I played on each the next system that came out. Like after the Commodore 64, I moved to the Amiga, and then I moved to the PC, which the very first PC, which was like the x86 or something. But I was playing games ever since then, and each new system, I would kind of play all the games that were out there, because back then there wasn't many games actually, and I had a lot of free time. I was a kid, so I was able to play a lot of different genres. Like I played a lot of like jumping platform games. I played a lot of RPG games back then. I used to play Ultima. So back then, the Ultima series was very popular. So I played all of the Ultimas from 1 to 7. And I love to play a lot of flight sims as well. So I really enjoyed flight sim games. So I pretty much played everything. And then when Doom first came out, that was the very first FPS game. And I think that kind of changed the industry, because it kind of introduced a new genre. And I think a lot of games after that, they just kind of, there was a lot of like copycat games. Like a lot of new FPS games came out as soon as Doom was released. So ever since then, I played all the FPS games since Doom. So I played Duke Nukem, I played like Shadow Warriors. I pretty much played every FPS game that came out up until like Quake 2. So basically, CounterStrike was kind of a combination of two of my favorite games at the time. I was playing a lot of Quake, and also I was playing a lot of Rainbow Six. So I liked a lot of the fast-paced, skill-based gameplay of Quake, and with Rainbow Six, I was really engaged with the team play focused gameplay of that. So I thought it would be great if I can combine those two and make like a kind of a new genre of game. So basically, it was like a tactical, skill-based, team-focused game, and that's really the concept behind CounterStrike. Because before I made CounterStrike, I worked on another game, another mod, and that one was it was called Action Quake. So it was more of a fast-paced game, kind of like Quake, but I think that game was my biggest influence, because it was the first game that introduced the concept of no respawning. So in that game, like CounterStrike, basically when you die, you didn't have the option to respawn. And I always felt that feature encouraged players to stick together and work as a team better. Whereas in Quake, when every time people respawn, it kind of it made people not value their life, and they played a bit more loose. They didn't really care about focusing, like working as a team. So yeah, that aspect of my previous game really influenced CounterStrike. So Robin Walker was one of the co-creators of Team Fortress. So and it was another person who I unfortunately can't remember. But basically, they contacted me through email, and they just said, "Are you interested in working with us?" And then when I said, yeah, for sure. And then they came down to Vancouver, because they're located just 2-hour drive from from Vancouver, so in Seattle. So they just came down and they interviewed me, and then we just had a friendly chat, and then we just quickly signed a deal to work together, and that's kind of when they officially became a part of CounterStrike. I eventually met Gabe when I came to Valve, and he was a very nice guy, very interesting. He was very eccentric. He had a very unique personality. Yeah. He's very forward, actually. That was one of the things I remember about Gabe is like he's very forward about, like, he'll ask you some questions that are very like kind of like it puts you on the spot, but he doesn't mean to make you uncomfortable. Well, he'll just be very straightforward about, oh, so what do you think about makes a good game or something, which is a very difficult question for me because I was very young. I was only 20 or something. So sometimes he'll ask me questions that are very like something like I would need a lot more of experience to answer. But he would just ask to me. He would like treat me like I was 30 years old or something when I was really just like 20. So, but yeah, so he kind of puts people on the spot. But he doesn't do it intentionally. He doesn't like. I think he's a very like just very straightforward person. He doesn't beat around the bush. Yeah. For about a year, I think, until CounterStrike 1.0. The Recoil and Quake, it was basically kind of like a cone, and it was like it would grow, the cone would grow. And the reason I didn't like that was because it was very random. So a lot of times when you killed a player, it was based on like your skill, but also it was like based on luck. So I wanted to kind of reduce the amount of luck. So I tried to make the CounterStrike Recoil more predictable, and I wanted to have players be able to control it and that became a skill in itself. So a lot of the good esports players, they're able to kind of like move their mouse and kind of compensate for their recoil. And it was kind of interesting because I didn't imagine it would be that popular, but I think a lot of new games, ever since CounterStrike was released, they kind of copy that recoil pattern, and they have their own kind of pattern. But I think the key is to reduce the amount of randomness and focus on player skill. I had a problem with CounterStrike. I had all these guns, and I didn't want people to just pick the best gun, because obviously they would, right? Why would someone pick like a pistol, or why would they pick a really bad SMG? So I had to come up with a system to incentivize people to kind of buy the cheaper guns. And so I basically came up with the buy system, and I gave people money. So the reason I did that was I thought that it would encourage people to buy the cheaper guns in the early rounds, and it just kind of gave the guns more balance. And so that was kind of the reasoning behind the buy system. I just wanted people to just use all of the guns instead of just the biggest AK-47. It's very interesting because, like, even today, no other game uses the buy system, which I find kind of. I find that they resort to other measures to balance their game. Like, for example, in Call of Duty, like, they give you all the guns, but like they'll I think they make even the SMGs, they make it kind of like effective in certain scenarios or something. But for me, the reason I came up with the buy system was I just thought it was much more easier to balance the guns if I made them that players had to save up the money for it. Yeah. So. It might be CS Siege. I don't know if you know Siege, but it's kind of an old one. I don't know. I don't think they play it these days. It was a hostage rescue map. So, but yeah, back then it was really popular. It was like before DE Dust came out, CS Siege was like the most popular map. I mean, there's a part of me that kind of regrets, like, when I sold the rights to CounterStrike when I was really young. I mean, I wish I kind of was a part of it, like I didn't give it all right away, but I mean, that's just something that I kind of accepted a long time ago, because, you know, when you're young, you just make a lot of stupid decisions. You kind of regret them, but at the same time, I really enjoyed my time working with Valve, and like the way that they treated me was just really top notch, and plus I was able to learn a lot from working with Valve. So I grew as a developer, and I kind of grew as a person as well. So it's not, I don't really hold any regrets or any grudges or anything like that. But I mean, I probably just regret like a little bit, but not a whole lot. You know. I play a lot of Rainbow Six Siege because my friends play it, so they kind of convinced me to play it. I mean, it's a good game. I'm not saying it's a bad game. It has its charms. But when I'm not playing Rainbow Six, I used to play a lot of Battlefield 1. I really enjoy Battlefield games. I'm not sure if it has a staying power as much as like CounterStrike or Dota or LoL. It's because I find Battle Royale to have too much random elements to it. Like, and in order for esports to really thrive, it has to be predictable. It has to have a skill set that players can train at. And I think Battle Royale has too many random elements that make it difficult for players to really, I guess, become like professional. I guess, I don't know. I maybe it's just my opinion, but I find it's just something that I'm not sure will have a long staying power in the esports. I mean, we come up with these great displays and always better displays, but you still can't figure out how to move in VR, and I don't think anyone's really come up with a really good solution, you know? I mean, we have these crazy contraptions, but none of them are really convenient, I would say. You know?